Hello viewers, today I would like to acquaint you with the topic discrimination based on age through my lecture. Ageism is a common parlance, and age studies usually refers to negative discriminatory practices against old people, people in the middle years, teenagers and children. There are several forms of age-related biases. Adultism is a predisposition towards adults, which is seen as biased against children, youth, and all young people who are not addressed or viewed as adults. Jeunism is the discrimination against older people in favor of younger ones. This includes jobs and cultural settings where the supposed greater vitality and or physical beauty of youth is more appreciated than the supposed greater moral or an intellectual rigor of adulthood. Adult centricism is the exaggerated egocentrism of adults, the social convention which defines maturity and immaturity, placing adults in an dominant position over young people, both theoretically and practically. Gerontocracy is the form of oligarchic rule in which an entity is ruled by leaders who are significantly older than most of the adult population. Chronocentrism is primarily the belief that a certain state of humanity is superior to all the previous and or future times. Based on the conceptual analysis of ageism, a new definition of ageism was introduced by Leverson, Larser and Solem in 2009. This definition constitutes the foundation for higher reliability and validity in future research about ageism, and its complexity offers a new way of systemizing the theories on ageism. Ageism is defined as negative or positive stereotypes, prejudice or discriminatory against or to the advantage of elderly people on the basis of their chronological age or on the basis of perception of them as being old or elderly. Ageism can be implicit or explicit and can be expressed on a micro, meso or macro level. Implicit ageism. Implicit ageism is the term used to refer to the implicit or subconscious thoughts, feelings and behaviors one has about older or younger people. This may be a mixture of positive and negative thoughts and feelings, but gerontologist Becca Levy reports that they tend to be mostly negative. Ageist stereotyping. Ageist stereotyping is a tool of cognition which involves categorizing into groups and attributing characteristics to these groups. Stereotypes are necessary for processing huge volumes of information which would otherwise overload a person, and they are often based on a grain of truth. For example, the association between aging and ill health. However, they cause harm when the content of the stereotype is incorrect with respect to most of the group, or where a stereotype is so strongly held that it overrides evidence which shows that an individual does not conform to it. For example, age-based stereotypes prime one to draw very different conclusions when one sees an older and a young adult with, say, back pain or a limb. One might well assume that the younger person's condition is temporary and treatable following an accident, while the older person's condition is chronic and less susceptible to intervention. On average, this might be true, but plenty of older people have accidents and recover quickly, and very young people such as infants, toddlers and small children can become permanently disabled in the same situation. This assumption may have no consequence if one makes it in a blink of an eye, as one is passing someone in the street, but if it is held by the health professional offering treatment, or managers thinking about occupational health, it could inappropriately influence their actions and lead to age-related discrimination. Managers have been accused by Edmund Palmer as stereotyping older workers as being resistant to change, not creative, cautious, slow to make judgments, lower in physical capacity, uninterested in technological change, and difficult to train. Another example is when people are rude to children because of their high-pitched voice, even if they are kind and courteous. A review of the research literature related to age stereotypes in the workplace was recently published in the Journal of Management. Contrary to common and more obvious forms of stereotyping, such as racism, ageism is more resistant to change. For instance, if a child believes in an ageist idea against the elderly, few people correct them. And as a result, individuals grow up believing in ageist ideas, even elders themselves. In other words, ageism can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Ageists believe against the elderly in commonplace in today's society. For example, an older person who forgets something could be quick to call it a senior moment, failing to realize the ageism of that statement. People also often say ageist phrases such as dirty old man or second childhood, and the elders sometimes miss the ageist undertones. In a classic study, researchers analyzed the effects of ageism among the elderly. They performed memory tests on the three selected groups: residents of China, deaf North Americans, and hearing North Americans. In the three groups, the Chinese residents were presumably the least exposed to ageism, with a lifelong experience in a cultural and traditionally venturous older generations. Lifelong deaf North Americans also faced less exposure to ageism in contrast to those with typical hearing, who presumably had heard ageist comments in their whole life. The results of the memory tests showed that ageism has significant effects on memory. The gap in the scores between the young and the old North Americans with normal hearing were double those of the deaf North Americans and 5 times wider than those of the Chinese participants. The results show that ageism undermines ability through its self-fulfilling nature. On the other hand, when elders show larger independence and control in their lives, defying ageist assumptions, they are more likely to be healthier, both mentally and physically, than other people in their age. Ageist prejudice. Ageist prejudice is a type of emotion which is often linked to the cognitive processes of stereotyping. It can involve the expression of derogatory attitudes, which may then lead to the use of discriminatory behavior. Where older or younger contestants were rejected in the belief that they were poor performers, this could well be the result of stereotyping. But older people were also voted for at the age in the game where it made sense to target the best performers. This can only be explained by a subconscious emotional reaction to older people. In this case, the prejudice took the form of distaste and a desire to exclude oneself from the company of older people. Benevolent prejudice. Stereotyping and prejudice against different groups in society does not take the same form. Age-based prejudice and stereotyping usually involves older or younger people being pitied, marginalized, or patronized. This is described as benevolent prejudice because the tendency of pity is linked to seeing older or younger people as friendly but incompetent. This is similar to the prejudice most often directed against women and disabled people. Age Concerns survey revealed strong evidence of benevolent prejudice. 48% said that over 70s are viewed as friendly, compared to 27% who said the same about under 30s. Meanwhile, only 26 believe over 70s are viewed as capable, with 41% saying the same about under 30s. Hostile prejudice. Hostile prejudice based on hatred, fear, aversion, or threat often characterizes attitudes linked to race, religion, disability, and sex. An example of hostile prejudice towards youth is a presumption without any evidence that a given crime was committed by a young person. Rhetoric regarding intergenerational competition can be motivated by politics. Violence against vulnerable older people can be motivated by subconscious hostility or fear within families. This involves impatience and lack of understanding. Equality campaigners are often that wary of drawing comparisons between different forms of inequality. The impact of benevolent and hostile prejudice tends to be different. The warmth felt towards older or younger people and the knowledge that many have no access to paid employment means there is often public acceptance that they are deserving of preferential treatment. For example, less expensive movie and bus fares. But the perception of incompetence means older and younger people can be seen as not up to the job or a menace on the roads when there is a little or exaggerated evidence to support this. Prejudice also leads to assumptions that it is natural for older or younger people to have lower expectations, reduced choice and control, and less account taken of their views. Digital ageism. Digital ageism refers to the prejudice faced by the older adults in the digital world. A few examples of the subtle ways in which digital ageism operates in cultural representations, research, and everyday life. Generational segregation naturalizes youth as digitally adept and the old as digitally dunces. Many cultural representations have long histories reproducing images of the life cycles of a mountain where we peak in middle age then decline. Older adults' experiences are often excluded from research agendas on digital media, and ageism is esconded within disciplines such as mass communication studies. For example, in a media diffusionist perspective, the practices of seniors are depicted as either negligible or as lagging, and the equation of diffusion with individual ownership can hide practical workarounds such as cell phone sharing or missed calls used by older couples on fixed incomes. Ageism is also inadvertently embedded in the ways that we generate statistics. For example, through data collected based on large age categories, for example 60 plus, foisting anyone over 60 into the grey zone which obscures differences. Therefore, age discrimination refers to the actions taken to deny or limit opportunities to people on the basis of age. These are usually actions taken as a result of one's ageist beliefs and attitudes. Age discrimination occurs on both a personal and institutional level. On a personal level, an older person may be told that he or she is too old to engage in certain physical activities like an informal game of basketball between friends and family. A younger person may be told they are too young to get a job or help move the dining room table. On the institutional level, there are policies and regulations in place that limit opportunities to people of certain ages and deny them to all others. The law, for instance, requires that all young persons must be at least 16 years old in order to obtain a driver's license in United States. There are also government regulations that determine when a worker may retire. Currently, in the US, a worker must be between 65 and 67 years old, depending upon his or her birth year, before becoming eligible for Social Security retirement benefits. But some company pension plans begin benefits at earlier ages. A 2006-7 survey done by the Children's Rights Alliance for England and the National Children's Bureau asked 4,060 children and young people whether they have ever been treated unfairly based on various criteria, say race, age, sex, sexual orientation, etc. A total of 43% of British youth surveyed reported experiencing discrimination based on their age, far eclipsing other categories of discrimination like sex 27%, race 11%, or sexual orientation 6%. Consistently, a study based on European Social Survey found that whereas 35% of Europeans reported exposure ageism, only 25% reported exposure to sexism, as few 17% reported exposure to racism. Ageism has significant effects in two particular sectors, employment and healthcare. Firstly, employment. The concept of ageism was originally developed to refer to prejudice and discrimination against older people and middle age, but as expanded to include children and teenagers. Like racial and gender discrimination, age discrimination, at least when it affects younger workers, can result in unequal pay for equal work. Unlike racial and gender discrimination, however, age discrimination in wages is often enshrined in law. For example, in both the United States, the United Kingdom, minimum wage laws allow for employers to pay lower wages to younger workers. Many state and local minimum wage laws mirror, such as based tied minimum wages. Midlife workers on average make more than younger workers, which reflects educational achievement and experience of various kinds. The age wage peak in the United States, according to census data, is between 45 and 54 years of age. Seniority in general records with respect as people age, lessening ageism. Statistical discrimination refers to limiting the employment opportunities of an individual based on stereotypes of a group to which the person belongs. Limited employment opportunities could come in the form of lower pay for equal work or job with social mobility. Younger female workers were historically discriminated against in comparison with the younger men, because it was expected that as young women of childbearing years, they would need to leave the workforce permanently or periodically to have children. Labor regulations also limit the age at which people are allowed to work and how many hours and under what conditions they may work. In the United States, a person must generally be at least 14 years old to seek a job, and workers face additional restrictions on their work activities until they reach 16 years of age. Many companies refuse to hire workers younger than 18, while older workers benefit more often from higher wages than do younger workers. They face barriers in promotions and hiring. Employers also encourage early retirements or layoffs disproportionately more than older or more experienced workers. Some political offices have qualifications that discriminate on the basis of age as a proxy for experience, education, or accumulated wisdom. For example, the President of the United States must be at least 35 years of age. A United States Senator must be at least 30. A United States Congressman must be at least 25. In the UK, age discrimination against older people has been prohibited in the employment since 2006. Since then, the number of age discrimination cases rose dramatically. The laws protect anyone over the age of 16 who is young as well as old. There were over 6,800 claims submitted to the Employment Tribunal in 2010-11 compared with just 900 in 2006 and 7. However, the figures for 11 and 12 show a 47% fall in the number of claims, and commentators have suggested that the repeal of the default retirement age may be the reason behind this. Also in Europe, pervasive levels of age discrimination are found in Belgium, England, France, Spain and Sweden. Job candidates revealing older age are found to get 39% in Belgium to 72% in France, less job interviews invitations compared to equal candidates revealing a younger name. In addition, in a survey for the University of Kent, England, 29% of the respondents stated that they had suffered from age discrimination. This is a higher proportion than for gender or racial discrimination. Social psychologists Abraham at the university concluded that ageism is the most pervasive form of prejudice experienced in the UK population. Discrimination is found to be heterogeneous by the activity older candidates undertook during their additional post-educational years. In Belgium, they are only discriminated if they have more years of inactivity or irrelevant employment. The above diagram explains in the US, according to the US Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the number of private sector age discrimination claims per year from 1999 to 2008 as depicted, which is highest in the year 2008 at around 25,000, followed by 2002 around 20,000. Secondly, healthcare. There is a considerable evidence of discrimination against the elderly in healthcare. This is particularly true for aspects of the physician-patient interaction, such as screening procedures, information exchanges, and the treatment decisions. In the patient-physician interaction, physicians and other healthcare providers may hold attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors that are associated with ageism against older patients. Studies have found that some physicians do not seem to show any care or concern towards treating the medical problems of older people. Then, when actually interacting with these older patients on the job, the doctors sometimes view them with disgust and describe them in negative ways, such as depressing or crazy. For screening procedures, elderly people are less likely than younger people to be screened for cancers, and due to the lack of this preventive measure, less likely to be diagnosed at early stages of their conditions. After being diagnosed with a disease, they may be potentially curable. Older people are further discriminated against. Though there may be surgeries or operations with high survival rates that might cure their condition, older patients are less likely than younger patients to receive all the necessary treatments. For example, health professionals pursue less aggressive treatment options in the older patients, and fewer adults are enrolled in tests of new prescription drugs. It has been posted that this is because of doctors' fear that older patients are not physically strong enough to tolerate the curative treatments and are more likely to have complications during surgery that may end in death. Other research studies have been done with patients with heart disease, and in these cases the older patients were still less likely to receive further tests or treatments independent of the severity of their health problems. Thus, the approach to the treatment of older people is concentrated on managing the disease rather than preventing or curing it. This is based on the stereotype that it is a natural process of aging for the quality of health to decrease, and therefore there is no point in attempting to prevent the inevitable decline of old age. Furthermore, caregivers further undermine the treatment of older patients by helping them too much, which decreases independence, and by making a generalized assumption and treating all elderly as feeble. Differential medical treatment of elderly people can have significant effects on their health outcomes, a differential outcome which somehow escapes established protection. Conclusion: prejudice and stereotyping leads to age discrimination that can affect everyone. It disadvantages older workers, resulting in an ineffective use of human resource. Ageist beliefs influence healthcare providers, professional training and service delivery, which in turn negatively affects older patients' treatment and health outcomes. Narrow views of aging leads to people to ignore substantial differences among older adults' driving abilities and to underappreciate their social needs. Ongoing education is needed to inform those in power that age is a poor predictor of performance and ability and should not be the basis of discrimination. I sincerely hope this lecture proves to be informative and enlightening for all the viewers. Thank you.